All right. It is my pleasure to introduce our main speaker tonight. Doug, come on up. Let's give Doug a round of applause.
Hi, I'm Doug. I'm an alcoholic. It's good to be here tonight. That was a great talk, Roman. Thank you. It's a hard deal, man, to get up here and spill your guts. I don't know about you guys, but I smoked a lot of weed, and I saw Willie Nelson on Sunday night, and said, roll me up and smoke me when I die, you know, and I really thought when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous in 1993 that you could scrape my brain and smoke it and get loaded. And it's funny, you know, I got here in 1993, I was smoking meth off a tinfoil, and I was going on 17 to 32 day runs. And, you know, that's like no sleep, no cat naps, no laying down. That was just staying awake and drinking, smoking weed. And I really thought it was the tinfoil that was going to kill me. That's how smoked out I was. You know, I heard bad things about tinfoil. Wasn't staying up 17 fucking days in a row. It was tinfoil. You know, because it would burn the holes in there and stuff, and I thought it was going to get in my lungs and give me cancer and all that shit. And I wasn't staying up 17 days or 32 days. But I got to AA. I was 26 years old. I never, you know, really amounted to anything in my life. You know, my name wasn't on a lease on a house. Wasn't on a name, you know, on a lease in joint with somebody else, like some friends or anything like that. My house, you know, I didn't have like an electric bill or a gas bill in my name. I never had my name on a deed or anything like that. I was never married. And, you know, it's funny, when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I hear these guys, well, I've been to prison, you know, my sponsor, he killed somebody drunk driving and went to prison. And the guy that would become my best friend in AA, he'd been to prison. Then he was homeless for 2 years in Santa Ana. And they had like lives, you know, like my buddy, he was going to be a career Marine over there at El Toro Marine Base and stuff. And, but his drinking took him out, and they locked him up in Fort Leavenworth for a few years. And then they escorted him to the gates. Then he was homeless for 2 years. But before that, he had a wife and a couple girls. And like I said, he was making a career out of the military. And even my sponsor, you know, even though he killed that guy, he was a body man. He worked in a body shop and stuff. And these guys were all like tough dudes, man. And I was just sitting there like, man, I never did anything. And then there was people in Alcoholics Anonymous too that, you know, my group of people talk shit about that group of people. You know, those people were like on psych pills, and they didn't find the power grid in themselves, so they took the little pill, and, you know, now they're saying they love everybody and shit. And you know, and after a while, after about 2 years in AA sober, I was thinking, man, there must be something still like wrong with me, you know, because I thought that I needed some psych pills in order to, like, you know, like straighten out. You know, I still had a hard time looking people in the eye. I wasn't comfortable in my own skin like they talked about in the promises. I wasn't getting any of that shit. You know, people would talk about, oh, I went to a meeting and I feel great after I left the meeting. And I'm like, fuck. I go to a meeting and my people wanted me to share. Like, they wanted you to get your hand up. This meant you wanted to live. And if you kept your hand down in the meeting, that meant you wanted to die. And so, fuck, I had to get my hand up in every meeting, right? And I couldn't even go to speaker meetings, right? Because the only person that's going to stay sober at a speaker meeting is the fucking speaker. You know, if I wanted to go to a speaker meeting, I needed to go to a participation meeting before I went to the speaker meeting, you know, to like keep things copacetic with my sponsor. And, but I would, you know, I'd get my hand up to go share, and I'd hope that I'd get called on first, you know, because that way I had this whole pitch worked out. But then I'd get called like fifth or sixth, and, you know, I'd hear Roman share, and then Susie share, and then Bill share, and then Harriet share, and then I'd hear all their shares, and I didn't really realize like I was identifying with all these people, but I'd get my hand up and I'd share what Roman shared, or you know, like what happened to me, and then after a while I'd be like, you know, in this like 10 to 15 minutes sharing, and then my head would like, why don't you shut the fuck up? Why are you still sharing? Why are you still talking, right? And so then I would stop sharing, And then my head would start to critique my share. Oh, you forgot to share about that. You didn't make your point on that. You're a fucking idiot. And da 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 da. So by the time the meeting was over, I was like exhausted. It's like I ran 26 miles, and I just would go home and just vegetate in front of the TV set. And I never got any relief in the AA meeting like they talked about.
Right.
And part of that problem is I held on to a secret. And I held on to a secret that I didn't want to get off of in the fifth step. And so I held on to that secret. And people in those days, I don't know if they say it up here in San Pedro or not, but down in Orange County, they said, meeting makers make it. And, 5 years of sobriety, your head's going to pop out of your ass. Yep. And so I kind of bought into that stuff. And I remember picking up my 5-year chip. And I was standing there, and I was doing the best I ever did in my whole life, Like being sober, I was able to show up to work, And I lived next door to the job for at that point, 10 years. And before I got sober, I was late every goddamn day. And most Mondays I called in 6, and most Fridays I left early. And the rest of the week was, iffy if I got there on time. But after I got sober, I could show up to work. And by showing up to work, I was able to build my career. I became a top flight real estate broker. I started a mortgage company there. I sold a house every single week for about 4 years straight. And I absolutely fucking killed it. And I was never going to do that. I didn't do that, loaded. When you stay up 17 days, no one's wanting to buy a house from you. Your fucking eyeballs are this fucking big. If you could look them in the eye anyways. I was always looking at my shitty ass shoes I was wearing. Just smoked out, man. And but being sober, I was able to do all that, right? But I subscribed to what these people said, that my head was going to pop out of my ass at 5 years of sobriety, and that meeting makers make it. And so for the first 3 years, I went to a meeting absolutely every single day. And then between 3 to 5 years, I think I missed 3 meetings. And my sponsor had told me too, Doug, excuse me. He goes, you need to give this thing everything you got and a little bit more than you think you got, or else you're going to end up doing the Thorazine shuffle at a nut ward on a tricycle. I was like, ooh, that's never going to happen to me. I'm fucking smarter than you guys. That's what I always secretly thought. I'd sit here in the meetings and just think that I was smarter than you guys. And I remember at the end of that first year, I asked myself, I go, did you give it everything you got? And I remember the answer I gave myself, I go, man, I hope that was enough. So I went to I don't know, over 500 meetings, maybe 560 meetings. I went to panels, went to those meetings. I worked every day. And I rode a bicycle for 11 months. And I paid off all my financial amends and stuff like that. But that was the incorrect answer. And I would stay sober for about 8.5 years. So I stayed sober from November 15th, 1993 till about June of 2002. And when I picked up that 5-year chip, I looked around and I felt like my head was a little further up my ass. And because I didn't feel any better mentally. I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I didn't like fucking going to meetings. And I go, them fuckers lied to me. Meeting makers don't make it. But the other thing I noticed too was I saw people come in here, like Roman with 6 months, and other people with 9 months or a year, less time than I had. And I saw them come in, and I saw that they were better off mentally than I was. And I wasn't really talking to my sponsor. I wasn't talking to my best friend that was an AA hitman. And I wasn't really letting anybody know what was going on with Doug, Part of the reason was my sponsor told me, it was almost like you weren't allowed to have any problems, right? Because if I went to him with my problems, he goes, well, then I'm going to be like a psychiatrist and you got to pay me $100 an hour if you want to talk to me about my problems. I was like, yeah, no problems. I certainly didn't have a fucking $100 to pay you per hour. And, but anyways, I made a decision that day when I picked up those 5 years. I walked away from Alcoholics Anonymous. I go, well, whatever's available here, it must not be available to me. And the only person I was consulting was me. So if you're consulting you, you're fucked. And This is absolutely a program where we got to help each other. We can't do it alone. And if you really look at the world out there, nobody does anything by themselves. It takes an entire fucking community. I mean, I just rode over 2 bridges and not one motherfucker built that bridge. It was a bunch of dudes that built those bridges. Just like in here, it's a bunch of people helping a bunch of people, man. And so I walked away from Alcoholics Anonymous, and I quit going to that Monday night meeting at that recovery house that my sponsors started. And I started watching Ally McBeal. And I liked Ally McBeal. I laughed watching that show. Some crazy ass shit, that woman and those crazy fucking lawyers. And but after a while, man, you know, this thing starts talking to you up here. And I didn't understand a lot of stuff, you know, like people talk about, you know, if I take a drink, the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes me. You know, when you start to hear with your eyes and see with your ears, I'm like, fuck, I'm never going to get this shit, you know. They'd say shit like that, you know. And, but after a while, man, this thing started talking to me, right? You know, they said we don't have a drinking problem, we got a thinking problem. And I didn't believe that either. I just thought, you know, and my life got incredibly better by absolutely not drinking and drugging. You just heard it. As a, you know, a really good real estate agent, bought houses, paid cash for my first brand new car, all kinds of good shit. I mean, I didn't want the white picket fence, but the house came with the white picket fence, right? I had the dog with the 2 different colored eyes. You know, everything looked like fucking roses. You know, on the outside, everything was perfect. But on the inside, I was still, you know, them squirrels were loose, baby. They were loose. And right before I picked up a drink, you know, I was getting ready to start a bank. I was going to start a bank like Countrywide. I was going to start, you know, collecting money for Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and get paid, really paid. And I was figuring out how to do that. And, but my head took me down, man. It's like, what are you going to do with all that money, hotshot? You're going to have all that money? You're going to feel like you do right now? You're going to have a boat next year in Newport, you know, Back Bay? You end up putting a fucking bullet in your head. And that thought kind of stopped me cold in my place. And at the same time, an old buddy came into my life and asked me if he could rent a room at my house. And I said, sure. And I thought my new BMW, my owning the house, me being a successful real estate broker, was going to overcome his alcoholism. And I did not realize that I was in prelapse mode. Couldn't see it. And I started driving him to the bar with my new Beamer, drinking my designated Coca-Cola. You know, they say, you know, if you go to the barbershop, you're going to get a fucking haircut. And I heard all that stuff in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I don't know, after the 3rd or 4th time there at that bar, I ended up lining 6 double shots of Jack Daniels up on the bar. I never wanted to touch meth again. I never wanted to smoke weed again. I never wanted to do anything again. I just wanted a couple shots. I just wanted a couple shots to knock that motherfucker off. And and I thought, as those drinks were being poured, I go, if it gets really bad, like they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, I could always go back. And so I took them shots down and everything was all right. My buddy's all, maybe I should drive the car home. I'm like, good idea. You know, let's just be safe. And all I thought about was going back to the bar that next night and getting 6 more double shots. And I did. And they hit me completely different than they did the night before. And the only thing that straightens that out is meth. And within 20 minutes, I'm in a garage in Garden Grove with some crazy tweaker broad fucking snorting a 20 bag off a shitty CD cover through a $20 bill. And it was on and cracking for the next 11 years and 2 months. And, you know, I ended up in front of a fucking judge, and he was issuing a restraining order. And I had gotten rid of my 9mm. I bought it on the DL from some dude I bought the house for. But I saw that maybe meth and the 9mm weren't, you know, going together very well. So I gave it away. And but I ended up in front of this judge, and the judge goes, well, if you got any crossbows or guns, you got to turn them into the police, and you can't buy any. But the kicker was, the judge smiled after he said all that shit. I'm like, did that motherfucker just smile at me? He told me I couldn't do that? You got me fucking twisted, bitch. And anyways, so by that time I was tweaking at, you know, antique stores, and at antique stores they have a lot of guns, right? And so I went to the antique stores and I started buying, 32s, 45s, shotguns, double barrel, single barrel, 30-30s, llamas, yamas, the whole 9 yards. 32s. I bought it all, man. Within 90 days, I owned 100 guns. Then you got to have little bags, right? Now I'm checking into the hotel because I'm leaving my girlfriend at home, and I go tweaking at the hotel with my lesbian porn. So I got 4 suitcases full of DVDs and DVD players and all the things that you could buy at the adult porn stores and lotion and everything. And I'm praying to God that shit doesn't open in the hotel lobby. And then I bought the guns. Now I got the guns. Now I'm sneaking the guns into the hotel room. Like, you don't see my rifles and shit. Just completely smoked out. And by the time they gaffled me up, I was arrested like 6 or 7, I think 7 times within 18-month period. That 7th time, I ended up being locked up for 8 years. I was looking at 34 and a half years in state prison. And I ended up at a big nut house. It's called Patton State Mental Hospital up there in San Bernardino. Maybe some of you guys have been there, alumni? Anybody? I'm telling you, man. So I get up there and they diagnosed me in like 2.5 seconds as being bipolar, which I'm not. And they got to prescribe, 500 milligrams of Depakote. So now, and they locked all the rooms because apparently right when I got up there, they switched from like letting you lounge around your little unit and sleep all day and shit. They wanted everybody to go to class and watch drug movies and drinking movies and marijuana movies and, suicide movies and, take all these fucking classes. And they put me on this 500 milligrams of Depakote and I'm like, I just want to lay down, man. You got to go over to that building. Oh, fuck. Just hammered off this shit. And I don't even like that. I just give me a blowtorch and a pipe and some fucking meth. I'll go anywhere you want me to go. But I hate downers, man. So anyways, I finally acclimated that. Or actually, I think I talked to him. I go, can I get off this shit? And they got me off that and put me on some Prozac or whatever. I don't know. I was on a bunch of different fucking drugs, one at a time, but whatever. But the thing was, when I was sitting up there at Patton State Mental Hospital, and I was thinking about that sponsor said, you need to give this thing everything you got, a little bit more, and you think you're going to end up doing a Thorazine shuffle on a tricycle on a fucking nut ward. And I go, God damn, if I would have never met that fucker in Alcoholics Anonymous, I wouldn't be here right now. Because I like to blame my shit on people, right? I like to blame my 2nd grade teacher. My 3rd grade teacher, that bitch took all my Hot Wheels. My 4th grade teacher, he wanted to beat me, but he couldn't because I wasn't his kid. But he was one of my favorite teachers. But I was just an outstanding idiot, I guess. I don't know. But, throughout my whole life, I blame people, and it's just like when I was at the bars, I could always find the other person. If I get that bad as that son of a bitch over there, I'll quit drinking because that's just disgusting. Losers, right? And, but I always, made it to the next step, and I always found someone a little further along that I could see that, if I got that bad, I'll stop. If I keep doing that, if I start dumpster diving like my buddies, I'll stop, right? I did all that shit. And, but there I was at Patton, and I'm blaming my sponsor, right? And the other thing that I heard too was, they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, don't leave before the miracle happens. It's like, what the fuck's the miracle? I didn't experience a miracle when I was here, but I did. I just couldn't see it because I wasn't talking to anybody. The only person I was consulting was me, and I'm an idiot when it comes to helping me. And so there I was, and I'm just like, God. And I got sober in Garden Grove at the Garden Grove Lano Club, and that was like the last meeting I attended. And some people pissed me off there. And I remember sitting there at Patton going, man, I wish I could go to that 6 p.m. meeting with those assholes. And the other thing that was funny too, there used to be, it still is, there's still a car show in Garden Grove on Friday nights on Main Street, right? And it got really huge. And the funny thing was, there used to be this guy, he had a fucking 57 T-Bird, black, and he's always little rags, cleaning it, just, stop shining that fucking thing. Anyways, but I'd go over there, right? And I'm a real judgmental prick. And I'm like, look at that guy with this fucking toupee polishing his 57. And then I just walk by and I just judge all the cars, assholes, jerks, this, because I don't like people. And I think I've been in prison locked up for 6 years, and I come out of the chow hall on a Friday night, and it's about time of the car show. And man, I wish I'd go to that fucked up car show up there on Main Street in Garden Grove. I think I was out of prison and sober about 11 months. I'm like, oh, that car show, let me go over there. There's the dude with the 57 Chevy, or 57 T-Bird, polishing it, right? I think I went there for 3 years. I kept looking at his hair, right? I'm looking at his hair. I'm like, son of a bitch, that's not a toupee, that's his real hair. It took me to have a spiritual fucking awakening to see that motherfucker had a real fucking hair, you know what I mean? And he finally got rid of that car and bought a different car. I don't even know what he bought, but I'm like, Jesus Christ, Doug, you're fucking blind, stupid, and fucked up. I mean, Helen Keller could fucking see better than I could. She could hear better than I could, and she could see better than I could. And, but you know, it turned out, you know, prison was the best thing that ever happened to me. It probably saved my life from the Garden Grove PD. And there's another backstory to that. I never really go into that, but there was a political battle. So I was in a political battle, I was in a family battle, and then the police department battle. And I lost all 3 battles. And but I got locked up. I got 8 years. I didn't get 34 and a half years. And, you know, 85% 2-striker. And, but I kept getting loaded in prison, man. You know, the dope showed up. I didn't even know, right? And you know that sponsor I told you that said, give it everything you got and a little bit more than you got? So I get to the main line. I think I'm there, I don't know, 6 months. And I get a phone, you know. You're not allowed to have a cell phone, but I bought one. And I go, well, let me call him up. I'm like, hey, Dean, what's going on? And we talked for a few minutes. And just before I hang up, he's all, don't get any write-ups. I'm like, what the fuck's a write-up? And I asked one of the guys, I'm like, can you get a write-up in here? Oh, yeah, you get a write-up. I'm like, I swear to God, I got a write-up the next week. I'm like, I got to stop talking to this motherfucker. If I wouldn't have talked to him, I wouldn't have got the write-up. If I wouldn't have talked to him, I wouldn't have been in Patton State Mental Hospital. I need to stay away from these AA people. And, yeah, I must have got arrested like 13 more times in prison. And, yeah, it was no joke, man. And especially being a 2-striker. And I really just righteously thought, like, I'm not going to get caught in here. I'm surrounded by cops. I got an electrified fence. I can't even control the light switch. And there's fucking snitches everywhere. It's just crazy. People dying to tell on you, you know, in level 2. It's just fucking crazy. Every time I bought a phone, that thing was gone in fucking 2 weeks. And, but anyways, enough of my bullshit. But it was a good day. I started off, the dealer gave me a bigger bag of meth, and I shot it up, and then somebody said something to me, and then I said something to somebody, and that person used it to try to throw me under the bus, and he was in my own car. And one of my buddies, he was the guy that drove the bus, and he's nothing nice. He's all, Douglas, you disgust me, rack it up. And I'm like, and this is not a person you want to have disgusted at you. And so I jumped on my rack, man, and I was pissed. I thought it was going to come down to like a knife fight at night with the dude that tried to throw me under the bus. And I was laying there just stressing real hard. And in that moment, it was the middle of January 2012. And up to that point, I haven't even made my bed in prison. I didn't make it at county jail. I didn't make it at Patton State Mental Hospital. And I didn't make it there. In fact, the guy that told me to rack it up, he referred to my bed as a nest. Like I was a dirty birdie. I was kind of insulted when he said that. But now he told me to rack it up. And so I racked it up. And in those moments I lay on that bed, that God I couldn't believe in, the God I wouldn't believe in. And then I figured if there is a God, that God that fucking abandoned me and, you know, now I'm a 2-striking felon. He doesn't want nothing to do with me. That God, he came to me and he revealed himself to me. And that God lives right here. And that's the greatest day of my fucking life. Because without that day, I would not fucking be standing here in front of you. At all. I wouldn't be sober. I wouldn't be in my right. I'd probably be fucking dead by now. And that was the greatest day of my life. And the next day, I got up and I made my bed. Without the military telling me to do it, without my mom telling me, without anybody telling me to do it. And I finally realized like a couple weeks ago where I got the resentment from making my bed. I'm not going to go into that, but I did. I had a resentment, and that's why I wouldn't make it. Well, I'll go into it because in the military, they wanted you to put a fucking collar in there. So we put the ruler in there. It had to be 3 inches. We ironed that motherfucker every morning. They still threw our mattress out the fucking window. So when I got the Alcoholics Anonymous, they go, you need to make your bed and hang up your coffee cut and all blip, blip, blip. And I'm like, not me. I'm not like you. You know what I mean? And I really thought that, but it was a resentment at the military. So anyways, I got up, I made my bed the next day, and I swear to God, it was like Harry Potter and those owls. Here comes the big book, here comes the 12 and 12, here comes the fucking Bible, here comes Bill Sees It, all this shit, and I just went, and I stuck it in the locker. And I really tried to stay sober. I only smoked weed for those 3 weeks. I didn't do any meth. And then I ended up getting an adverse transfer going to level 3, and I went over there, and I really thought I was going to stay sober there, locked up in a cell. That didn't help, and but anyways, I tried, and I ended up getting in a fight, and I ended up in the hole, and when I was in the hole, I go, man, if you don't change what you're doing, you're going to end up staying in here the rest of your life. Like you're going to get clipped, and you're going to end up, catching a third strike and catching all day, And about that time, I finally, and I hadn't read the big book in years, but there was always a story in there. I don't know if you guys heard about the jaywalker, but they have this little anecdotal story called the jaywalker. And I used to sit there and think like, what's this idiot got to do with alcoholism? He's a fucking retard. He should be locked up. He should have a skull broken and all this shit, right? I just didn't understand how it equated to me. But when I was sitting there in the hole, I'm going, you're the fucking jaywalker, dude. And thank God for that. So I finally took the step, man. And so I came to believe. I finally kind of took step 1. I got out of the hole. I tried to stay sober. I stayed sober for about 100 days. Ended up shooting some more dope. And but in the meantime, I started reading that big book, and I started, really studying. I got up and read pages 62 to 63 and the 7-step prayer every morning. I read a half a chapter at count. I started reading a lot of books. My brother wanted me to read the Bible, so just to placate him, I read, about Jesus. And so the more I'm reading the Bible and I'm reading the big book, and the closer I think I'm getting to God, it seems like the more trouble I'm getting in with everybody else out here. I'm like, God damn, the closer I'm getting to God, worse shit's getting for me. And I go, I need to back away from God. But then I go, you just found God. You better stay with God, even if all these people disagree. Fuck them. And I did, man. And that was another decision. I stayed here. And it was 24 days at the house. It was almost going to be another fight. And I did not want to fight. I already called this dude out twice, and he chickened out. But this third day, somehow somebody pinned some balls on him. And he's, fucking, and I'm just like, oh my God. And I remember I was walking around in the day room, and I just surrendered. I told God, I go, look, God, if I got to fight this guy, I'm going to kill him. I'll write his family a nice men's letter. And and I just told God that I'd do whatever he wants, in here or out there. I'm fucking done. And with that, this thing shut off. And I didn't realize like it was that noisy up there. And I got out, and you could hear hummingbirds. I didn't know there was hummingbirds in this area. I thought hummingbirds were like in like Central America, South America, and shit like that. I did not know they had like hummingbirds here in the United States, let alone California. And they're pissed off little birds, man. I don't know if you ever seen one. And you get next to its flower or something like that, it starts flying at you, making all kinds of noise and shit. And then the squirrels, there's squirrels in the sea. When I got back, there's squirrels, there's raccoons, there's coyotes. There's all kinds of shit going on around here. It's beautiful. And, but that surrender meant everything, man. I ended up going to a recovery house in Costa Mesa. They put me through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I left there after 31 days because I wanted to kill every one of them. And, but I didn't skip a beat. I moved into an apartment I owned. It's right behind the Garden Grove Alano Club. And I remember when I bought that place, I go, if things get real bad, I could always go there. Move here and go there. And man, God made it so that like if I lost my legs, I could crawl over there and get sober. And I went over there morning, noon, and night. I went to like 5 meetings a day. I went to Charlie Street Detox every day. I rode my bike. I caught the bus. I did whatever it took. And I put people on my couch. I put men and women on my couch. I let them stay there 2-3 weeks. I put them into detoxes. I drove them down here to Redgate or whatever. I did whatever. I was on fire for Alcoholics Anonymous. When I was sober last time, it was almost like I couldn't leave the same like 5-mile radius area that I was always like drunk in. And I always just thought, man, you don't go anywhere. And that was one of the first things I ever heard in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's like, take a trip, not taking a trip. And because my brother would always invite me to go to, Utah on Thanksgiving. But I couldn't afford to leave and drink. I could only afford to like stay in town and drink. So I never went to Utah. And I just remember that. And so when I was sober, I never really went anywhere. I just stayed in that little Garden Grove area. I would never come up here to San Pedro. You know, I'd never go to LA. I'd never go to Hollywood. I'd never go anywhere. I'd never go to Corona or anything. Just stayed in Garden Grove. And that's one of the things I thought. I just stayed in this bubble. And the other thing I want to share with you before I get done here is, you know, those people said, you know, meeting makers make it. I love meetings. I go to lots of meetings. The only reason I go to meetings is to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous and give somebody some hope. I'm not everybody's cup of fucking tea. And not everybody's my cup of fucking tea. Most people I don't even want to hear share, but I give them the tolerance and love that they deserve to get their story out. You know, you know. But, and I do that because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the other thing is, once you work the steps thoroughly and honestly to the best of your ability with a sponsor, and you work that 5th and 9th step, your head will pop out of your ass. Guaranteed. There's no like time limit on it. If you read in the Spiritual Experience in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says things that, you know, that we could have, you know, disciplined ourselves out for years and years and years wouldn't come to us as quickly as they did when we took these steps in a few short months. So when I surrendered 24 days to the house, my whole being changed. You know, I had what they have, that mental shift, that psychic change, that personality change. You know, all that stuff means the same thing. You know, the spiritual experience, spiritual awakening, psychic change, personality change, sufficient enough to overcome alcoholism. All 4 of those things mean the same thing. And when I got out, I studied that book. You know, I finally heard it. I heard it 1,000 times in meetings, but one day I just finally, and that was the other thing at the recovery house. I was going to get my dictionary and thesaurus and really start studying the big book. And they said, your feelings aren't facts, just like it says up there on the wall. And I remember this fucking dude, I hated him at the recovery house. He's like, oh, you don't have to look those words up in a dictionary or thesaurus. You could feel what they mean. I'm like, fuck, I'm going to kill these people. Feel the word. Fuck you. And so when I left there and I'm at my own house and this guy's all, you know, the program of action is outlined in the first 164 pages of recovery. Study it. You know, it's not a novel, it's a textbook. So I went home and I studied it. And if I didn't know the word, I looked it up. You know, I had an old dictionary, a new dictionary. I didn't even realize there was one on the phone until this old dude showed me. And, but I, you know, and there was a commercial out at that time right before I got out of prison. And this guy's barbecuing, right? And his friends ask him a question. And then they go, well, how certain are you of that answer? He goes, oh, I'm 99% certain. They go, well, then you don't know. And he goes, no, I'm 99% certain. They go, you don't fucking know. He's like, I'm 90. He starts losing it, right? And his friends are laughing at him. So I just kind of took that as like, if I'm not 100% on what the word is, let me just look it up and find out what it means. And I just did that. You know, and those guys at that book house that said, give it everything you got, I gave it everything I got from 2013 to 2020, 2014. And at the end of that year, I asked myself, was that enough? And I'm like, fuck yeah, it was enough. I did everything I absolutely could to stay sober. I worked the 12 steps. I gave it everything I got on every single day, and I didn't leave anything on the table. Anything. And that's what it takes. It takes that kind of commitment. But you got to realize that your ass is kicked. You know, and if you're sitting up here at Fred's place, I'm sure your ass is kicked. And, you know, and it's just like you sitting there. I mean, to come up here is a form of surrender. To walk through that door is a form of surrender. You know, to admit that you need help is a form of surrender. You know, we're fucking people that don't give up. Absolutely don't give up. Ever. I will kill you before I give up. And somehow I got to give up, man. And so if you walk through that door, you gave up in some form or fashion. And you just really sit here and you talk to your peers and you talk to the people that run this place and you talk to the people in the AA meetings and just get that shit out of your fucking head so you can have a clear view of what's going on, man. And you get to have a beautiful life. And I'll share this one last thing. You know, I went to meetings and I've been to Africa. I've been on safari. if you could believe that. I've been to Japan, and I remember I went to Japan a few years ago, and I go, man, I want to get a meeting in here. So I went, and this lady spoke very little English, and she brought the whole snack bowl over to me. I'm like, I don't want snacks. So, oh no, here, she was insisting. And so I pulled up the Google Translator, right? And so she could read the Japanese off my phone. And so I'm talking, and she's translating, and they're like, oh, ooh, yeah, geez, and they're doing all that stuff. So I know that they were getting this story, man, and it was a beautiful thing. And it was just like in Africa. I was there in Cape Town, and I went to a meeting, and it was in a church, and everybody kind of speaks, that English like the Brits, right? With the accent. And I was late and sat down, and it was one of them circle ones like you see on fucking TV. I'm like, oh my God. And they go, and it was a round robin, and you. And I'm like, oh, and I just shared, and they all loved me, man. They wanted to take me like to the next meeting in the next place, but somehow my phone didn't work, and I couldn't call them. I was bummed. But just to go to that meeting was fucking off the charts. To go to that meeting in Japan, to go to that meeting in Africa, to go to the meetings in Costa Rica, to be able to leave town, I know a lot of people at that Garden Govellano Club, they're not going to go to Westminster this year. They're not going to go to fucking Anaheim either. Just locked in that little circle, man. Just like their foot's tied to a fucking post in the ground. They're not going to do anything. This program will set you free, and you can fucking blow your mind. Thanks for letting me share, you guys.